So I was watching the show 13 Reasons Why, and honestly, I'll tell you this much. This is gonna get really dark, but if I ever took my life, I think this would be one of my 13 reasons. And honestly, today's story does get really intense and really just embarrassing, so make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because seriously, it means a lot when you guys do. But what is going on, you guys? My name is Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So today's story takes place back when I was in middle school. It's my grade 7 year, and I remember I was just chilling, doing my own thing one time, walking down the hallway. And I remember when I was walking down the hallway, I was talking to a lot of my friends that were there. Well, friends in quotations, I'm gonna put it in, because honestly, a lot of these friends of mine aren't actually my friends anymore. But at the same time, it was middle school, so who really out there is still friends with their middle school friends? If you are still friends with your middle school friends, make sure you guys comment down below. But basically, I remember what I was doing was I was walking down the hallway with some friends, and basically what ended up happening was I ended up seeing my middle school crush in the hallway and got really shy. Now, I've talked a lot about my middle school crush on this channel, and one thing I gotta say is that no matter what, to this day, she's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, other than my girlfriend. She's probably watching the video right now, so I love you, babe. Anyways, going on with the story though, I remember basically when I saw her in the hallway, I looked at her and kind of panicked. So I remember I ended up hiding behind my friend group and basically kept walking down the hallway. In any way, there was no way I was going to embarrass myself at all in front of this girl. There was no way I was gonna let her see my goofy, loser, uncool side that I had back in middle school. Now, one thing I will say is that I was really insecure in middle school, and don't get me wrong, I feel like a lot of middle schoolers feel this way. But one thing I will say is that if anything came up to me, my middle school crush, I always wanted her to think I was cool. Like, for example, I'd post photos of me going to car dealerships, sitting in the cars that were inside, and basically acting like it was my own car, and post it on Instagram back in the good old days. Very embarrassing, but I mean, let's be real, a lot of us have done that already. And I remember basically one time when I was going to my locker, my middle school crush ended up actually coming up to me. She came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm just curious. There's a new girl in our school, and like, I think she's like actually like kind of into you. I was just wondering, like, have you spoke to her?" Now, I found it really weird how my middle school crush decided to tell me about this new girl in school, and honestly, I totally just ignored her and said, "Oh, like, nah, like, I don't talk to her." Acting like I'm playing the cool guy that doesn't actually want her, even though I'm basically begging to have her. And then she ended up telling me, "Okay, whatever." And she ended up walking away. I remember at that point, I remember one of my homies came up behind me and said, "Yo, bro, you ended up talking to her. What'd she say?" "She brought up another girl that likes me," is what I told him. And I remember my friend looked at me all weird saying, "All right, whatever." Anyways, going on, I remember I ended up going to my class that day that I had with my middle school crush and this new girl that ended up coming to our school. I remember she ended up entering the classroom when all the students were sat down, and the teacher walked up in front of the class and said, "Okay, class, so this is our new student. She is here from Romania, so everyone show love and respect, and yeah, take a seat." This girl instantly gets up, walks over to the seat that was empty that was right beside me, because I was sitting in the back of the classroom, and she sat down beside me and looked at me and stared me down and said, "So I was wondering, like, what's your name?" Hi, my name is Bubba," is what I said, and I ended up shaking her hand. I remember when I shook her hand though, my middle school crush looked at me and kind of stared at me kind of odd. Now, I had no idea why this happened, and honestly, like, it was super awkward. So I remember when I saw her looking at me, I basically refused to talk to the new girl in our class because I didn't want her to think that I had any intentions with her. Kind of a smart move, but at the same time kind of dumb. Anyways, later on throughout the class, I remember our teacher ended up handing out an assignment. It was an assignment that we had to do with partners, and basically we had to make a PowerPoint presentation on mythical creatures that, you know, were back then, like, you know, known as myths and stuff. So basically, I remember I ended up choosing my partner, which was one of my homies, but he already ended up finding a partner, so I ended up getting stuck looking around the classroom for a partner. Luckily for me, there was the new girl in our class that ended up walking up to me saying, "Oh, like, do you want to be my partner?" I guess, is what I said. And I remember I ended up becoming partners with this girl. So I remember when me and her were like working on the project and stuff, we ended up having to take it home because, well, I'm gonna be real with you guys, the project was a really big project. So I remember I ended up going home to my place and ended up inviting her over to my house to basically work on the project. And I remember as she came over, she was really excited to come over and stuff, and she was super weird. I remember when my mom opened the door for her, my mom ended up saying, "Oh, she's cute." And then basically the girl literally said, "Oh, like, yeah, like, I hope your son thinks so." Because I remember when I looked at her and said, "Why would you say that?" I ended up seeing the new girl that came to our class was literally wearing like a really cute dress. I found it super awkward and was hoping that this girl didn't think this was like a date or something. I don't know. I don't want her getting the wrong mindset. But basically, she ended up coming into my house and we ended up working in the living room doing our school project. And I remember as we were doing our school project, she kept asking me questions about the school. Like, for example, who's the worst teachers, you know, like who to stay away from, who to be on who's good side, how to get to the cafeteria lineup before anyone else gets there to get the cool ice cream. Okay, that was mostly something I knew, but you know, whatever. And basically, one thing led to another. She ended up popping a question that I did not expect her to ask. She ended up asking me, "Oh, like, just a question, do you have a crush on this girl girl. She ended up literally having a photo on her iPod and was legit a photo of basically my middle school crush. I remember I looked at the photo and said, I mean, yeah, like I liked her for a couple of years now. She was pretty cool. And me saying that, I remember she ended up moving her iPod away and looking at me, staring me deep in the eyes and said, why? Why do you like her? Like, what's so good about her? I remember I looked at her and said, I don't know, like she's cute and I've had a crush on her for like the last 2 years. I remember this girl ended up saying, oh, like, then why didn't you like make your move? Because I couldn't is what I told her. And then I kept just working on the project. I remember this girl ended up getting really irritated that I said that and ended up slamming her hands on the table saying, why don't you like me instead? Like, I don't understand. Like, don't you think I'm cute as well? I ended up looking at her super awkwardly and saying, yeah, listen, like, I think you're cool and all, but like, I just don't like you like that. I only like my middle school crush. And also, we just met. I remember when I said that, she looked at me deep in the eyes and said, well, like, that doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it does, is what I told her afterwards. And for some reason, she wasn't taking no for an answer. To the point where I remember she got so mad, she ended up standing up and actually leaving my house without saying a word. I remember my mom actually walked into the conversation and just saw her leave, and my mom just looked at me saying, you know, she's maybe cute, but she's pretty psychotic, it seems. And ended up actually going back to the kitchen, making me a sandwich. Now, I thought this was just the end of the conversation, and that's it. You know, like, simple as that. Girl realizes I don't like her, and I only like one woman, my middle school crush. But sadly, that wasn't the case. Things ended up going for the worse. I remember the next day when I ended up going to the classroom, we were basically getting ready to tell our presentations. And I remember basically, for some reason, my partner was there, the new girl, but she kept looking at me in like a most devious way, as if she was gonna do something really bad to me or my middle school crush. So I remember I ended up deciding to be the superhero here and basically tell my middle school crush before class started, hey, like, listen, I don't know what this girl's gonna do, bro, but I'm just gonna say, like, just stay away from her. I remember my middle school crush ended up looking at me saying, okay, I guess, and it ended up going back to her seat. And me, I ended up going back to my seat, and then my partner, aka the new girl in class, ended up walking into the room and sat down. At this point, everyone was doing the class presentations, talking about mythical creatures and stuff, and then one thing led to another. It was my turn. I ended up going up with the PowerPoint I ended up making because, you know, she ended up leaving halfway through while we were working on the project, and basically started presenting it. And as I was presenting it, I remember this was the most worst moment ever. We were getting towards the end of the presentation, and out of nowhere, this girl decides to come up behind me and pants me in front of my entire class. That is right. She literally showed my eggplant in front of my entire class because that day, for some reason, I decided to go commando to school. Listen, like I said earlier, I didn't make smart decisions in school, and this was definitely one of them. But at the end of the day, I mean, hey, I guess my crush ended up seeing how big I was. Anyways, guys, far from more embarrassing but crazy stories. Peace out, guys.